Good morning, everyone. Welcome. So we're going to start almost right on time. Welcome to 2025 C.R.E.B. Education Seminar featuring Ryan Lundquist. So excited to have him here today. He's a certified residential appraiser and market expert. Do we have any Metrolist or C.R.E.B. people here? Any board of directors? If you're here, can you please stand? And staff as well, please. And former C.R.E.B. directors counts too, Terry. We'd love. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm Carrie Kiefer, and I'm your new broker engagement manager. Super excited to be here. And just a little background about me. I have over 30 years of real estate experience, most recently a regional VP for a major brand. And I'm super happy to bring a new perspective to C.R.E.B. Okay. Thanks also to the Sacramento Association of Realtors for allowing for this lovely venue for everyone. And just want to share a few thoughts today on the real estate market. The chief economist for CAR, Jordan Levine, talked about this being the year of the curveball, right? With all that's been going on with the wildfires, the crazy stock market, you name it. And I'm sure Ryan's going to give us great insight into that. So let me tell you a little bit about Ryan. I'm going to keep it short. I'm just going to go with his Facebook profile. But you do have a profile that was out front. So my favorite part about your bio, it says you're an optimistic doer, a wood tinkerer, appraiser, housing market analyst, blogger, speaker, and family man. And you just got back from New York? Is that right? All right, Ryan. Well, without further ado, please join me. And if you out in Zoom land have any questions, please be sure to put them in the Q&A. We look forward to hearing from you. So much.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really glad that you are here. And I hope that we have a good time today. Hope that you kind of leave here with some, nuggets to talk about what the market's doing and maybe some ideas for how to focus business. And I hope we can laugh a little bit. I would say, curveball is probably the right word for this year. And I think uncertainty has been the biggest curveball of all. But is everyone ready to unload and talk about the market? Okay, great. Well, I'd say here's what the housing market looks like right now, the narrative online. And it's been a real dumpster fire, right? Where everything is going to collapse. We're all going to die. There's nothing but destruction. And so if you're looking for hope in life, like you probably don't want to go online, right? But this is sort of what the narrative looks like. And so for 5 years, every year, no, the market's going to crash this year. No, it's the next year. And it just keeps getting punted down the road. But the big thing this year is we actually have seen prices dip. Okay, they just haven't crashed by any stretch. But I'd say the market is in this weird place where there's just no sense of urgency among buyers and sellers. Would you concur? Yeah, absolutely. And so I'd say it feels very stuck with where it's at right now. But I'd say also the temperature has changed. And I swear this whole thing's not going to be memes. But I'd say that a good way to describe the trend right now is that the market is soft, but it's not as soft as it was in June and July when it felt like supply was really exploding. There's been some definitive change, okay? And of course, this is the moment I think that the real estate community has been talking about. Like, we're going to have this Indiana Jones moment where lower rates are going to replace this softening market, and then the market's going to go nuts. And we've been promised that for 3 years in a row, and it's totally happened, right? No. And so I think we'll also get into that. But I think we're in a place, though, where there is some positive news. And I'm going to jump in and out of a lot of different counties. There's 14 counties maybe on Zoom here today. But I'm going to focus primarily on the Sacramento region. And so when you look at the September sales from 1999 onward, what do you notice about this year in September compared to the previous 2 years? The number of closed sales. It's up. Is it up a lot? No, but can we just give a little bit of a golf clap? Like, and I'm serious, can we just give a little bit of a golf clap? Okay. We rejoice in the small wins. I shared this on LinkedIn and someone was like, so in other words, it's the fourth lowest year in the last 25 years. I'm like, yeah, that's another way to look at it, right? But when you look in the region as a whole, when you look at 12 different counties, what's your observation for September? Do you see how there's a little bit of change? And when what's happened is that we had more pending contracts when rates went down, and that's resulted in a little bit more relief in closed sales. Again, like tiny little golf clap, nothing major, right? Here's what it looks like when you have 11 counties on one graph, the median price since 2012. This is a hot mess, but what's your observation? What do you notice about the trend through the years? Kind of, yeah, obviously gone up, and then it looks like maybe down a little bit, and then, but would we say that all ships rise and fall with the tide? The trend going on in most counties, it's really similar. And we zoom in to just 5 years, and it's still like, it looks like it's all over the place. You see El Dorado in red, and it can be incredibly manic, up, down. It's all over the place. And so sometimes what we want to do, we want to look at Sacramento, our largest county. We want to look at the region. It gives us a good reading for the market, right? Now, when you look at price stats today in Sacramento County, how would you describe prices based on this year over year, September? Up, down, sideways? Slightly down depending on the metric. Sometimes people in real estate were like, this is the only thing I see. I don't see the larger one, right? But then we look at a different county, Stanislaus, what do you notice? Okay, down, some are up. Here's Yuba County, down. Here's Nevada County, down, up, depending on the metric. Here's Yolo County, and what's up? I know there's a Yolo watch party right now. Hey, my people, just want to say hi. But you can see it just depends on the metric, okay? Here's San Joaquin County. Does anyone list in Stockton ever? Okay, no, not in this room. Okay, we've got one, fantastic. And so you can see San Joaquin County, more definitive declines, all right? Here's Solano County, down, depending on the metric. Now, here's something interesting, though, that I think a lot of people in real estate are going to start encountering. What do you notice about El Dorado stats? They're up. And so do we walk away and go, hey, prices are up 4 to 10%? Is that the narrative? Because I shared this visual and someone walked away with that. They didn't read what I wrote about it. What do we see down here? Square footage was 10% larger in size. Could that affect the stats? If you have larger, more expensive homes selling, could that be the reason why the stats show up 4 to 10%? And so on all my visuals down here, you can look back and Solano's up by 5%, San Joaquin 6% larger. Like, we've got to look at size. It's so important for our narrative, all right? Now, when I want some group participation here when we look at Placer. By a show of hands, who does business in Placer? Okay, a good amount of the room. All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to look at just the median price. This is April. We're going to quickly go through 6 months. And I want you to say whether it's down, up, or flat. And so let's just practice right here. Is this up, down, or flat? Down. Okay, so when I say April 2025, you say down. May 2025. Okay, come on, guys. May 2025. June 2025. We're so back, baby. Okay, July 2025. Up. August 2025. Flat. September 2025. Okay, and so do you see what just happened? We are all over the place from month to month. Imagine someone on your social media following you, and it's like a game of ping pong. The market's up. Just kidding, the market's down. No, we're flat. Okay, oh, we're so back. And it becomes this manic display. All right, now we can't control the stats. The stats do bounce around, but I have some suggestion for prices, okay? And my suggestion is to look at price indexes, not just traditional metrics. And so here's Zillow. I'm not saying to look at the Zestimate. Like, if you walk away with that message, that's not what I intended to communicate. But here's Zillow's price index. You can see it at that link. And it's down about 2.5% for Sacramento. And I find a price index, it's not as noisy as the median price. And so sometimes in our analysis today, we've got to look and go, well, what's the median doing? What's the average doing? What's happening in the region? What does Zillow say? What does Homes.com index say? And then there's going to be a lot of strength there. Now, does this perfectly describe every single price range? Like, would we look at the luxury market and say it's down 2.46% and condos and single family detached? No, we're the expert. We got to pull comps and see what the market's doing there. All right. Now, when we zoom out and look at the 50 largest metros in the United States, what do you notice with these ones that are up and then these ones that are down? Can you read any of the areas? Does anything surprise you? Who's down? Do you see a lot of Texas, a lot of Florida, everywhere where Californians moved, right? It's us, we're the problem. No. And then, but you're also starting to see some California in the mix here, Sacramento. But when you see areas that are up, a lot of the Midwest, the Northeast. And so is the market the same across the country? Absolutely not. No, and so when we look at the median price from Redfin, and in 2025, do you see how it's up 2% from last year? Okay, and so we can look nationally, the median price, which represents thousands of market, is up 2%, but you look, some markets are declining and some markets are increasing, right? So just something we want to think about. And then you might be like, man, I hate the median price. I'm all about the Case-Shiller index, right? You're like, what's up? And it's up about 2% this year. So it's showing the same thing. It's no longer up by 20% like it was a few years ago. And then you're like, I hate all of those things. Here's a Freddie Mac price index. Nationally, it's up about 2%, okay? But really, I'd say that the online narrative about price change, when we go online, quick price change, we're going down, rapidly, we're all gonna die. But it's kind of felt like a slow burn, hasn't it? Can you believe that after 3 years of being in this market where rates more than doubled, that we don't have very much relief with prices? Isn't that astounding? And so, but I would say we're starting to see more pronounced change finally in the stats where you're like, oh, the median was down 5% in Sacramento. Are you having a lot of conversations with people who bought in mid-2022 and having to say, hey, it looks like you're lower? Has anyone had a conversation with someone who bought in later 2021 and they're expecting $200,000 in equity? And then you go, yeah, it's basically what you paid then. Anyone by a show of hands? Okay, so we need to expect these conversations, all right? But here's a part of the market that I would say it's not a slow burn, and that's new construction, okay? Has anyone been representing buyers on new construction? What have builders been doing this year? They are lowering prices. That is the last resort, and builders are doing it. And so here's a look at national trends. National average prices are down 1%, but do you see the markets where prices are up? Northeast, Midwest. What area, what location is showing the most amount of price drops? Northern California. Congratulations to us, right? And so this is a part of the market where it's more pronounced. So maybe some parts of the market are subdued, but we look to new construction and go, oh, it's a different vibe. Condos, this is a hot mess of a visual. All condo sales in Sacramento County. Have you noticed when pulling condo comps, sometimes you're like, oh, wow, there's a big difference from last year to this year. Maybe in a detached neighborhood, you're like, guy, it's flat or it's down a little bit, but sometimes with condos, you're like, yeah, it gets down 30,000 or whatever the answer is. And so we just want to be aware that the market is not the same in every location. That's what I love about real estate experts. They can say, hey, what part of the market do you want to talk about? That's that Tom Ferry thing, when you're at the gym and then you're wearing your realtor hat and someone says, hey, how's the market? You're like, whoa, which market? Are you interested in buying, selling, renting, or investing, right? Maybe don't do that exactly, but there's something to that. But look at condos. So here's the interesting thing. Here's a $350,000 purchase with a $600 HOA fee. Do you notice what the mortgage payment is? And then here's a $434,000 house with no HOA fee. Do you see what the mortgage is? And so that's why there's been a reaction among condos where buyers are going like, man, how much more bang can I get for my buck in a different location? And so some investors look at their condos and go, hey, if these HOA fees keep going up, then I'm going to sell this. And so there's other insurance issues going on here and stuff. But I think it's a good reminder. When we look at closed sales, we got to recognize these represent the past, and we don't want to get caught up or hung up on the hottest sales from the past and not recognize where is the current market? Where do we see the current market? in the actives and the pendings. It doesn't matter what that stock sold for in the past, how glorious how much you used to weigh in high school, how much I used to weigh. What do I weigh right now? And we see that in the actives and pendings. Did that get weird? Okay, so let's get even weirder. By a show of hands, who has ever worn Obsession cologne or smelled it in your life? Where are my wearers? Okay. Who has never heard of Obsession? Okay. So Obsession used to be all the rage. I have a local realtor friend who said that this is what the club smelled like in the 90s, right? And I think that's probably a true statement. But we're utterly obsessed with bubble, bubble, bubble. And I want to just provide some insight. And when you look at Sacramento County, the largest county in the region by volume, what do you notice about the months of supply at this same time in 2007 compared to this last month? Is it a little different? And so here's the danger. Sometimes people today are expecting 2007 or 2008 results with 2025 stats. I don't say that to sugarcoat the market to say, hey, everything's fine. I'm saying that it's a different dynamic. And when you look at the median price in blue, do you see how quickly prices were able to go down, right? When inventory was at 14 months. Okay? And then right now, the market it's felt very stagnant or stuck. We've seen a little bit of relief in this year with prices dipping, but it's been very hard to produce that crash without more supply. I'll show you another image about that later. But here's a great way to describe the market. Can we read this together? Okay. Not crashing like 2007, not flexing like 2021, and softer than 2019. Okay. And so the market's in this place as we compare it to all those other years. All right. Now, here's the problem though. You have a lot of sellers who are like, I identify as a seller from 2021. And I'm like, well, you guys have to work that out with the seller, get them on the same page in this market. Okay. I like that one. I thought that was funny. But when we look at equity growth in 12 local counties, what do you notice from the first quarter of 2012 through this most recent quarter? How much has the median price typically risen? Pretty substantial, usually about somewhere between $300,000 to $400,000. And think about it this way, though. A lot of that growth, like 2020 and 2021, a massive part of this growth. All right. And so there's a lot of equity in today's market. All right. And so I think that there's 4 questions that we want to focus on. What can you do with your equity? Where do you want to be in life? Who do you want to do life with? If you think the market's going down, where do you want to ride down the market? I think these are very powerful questions, probably not in one Instagram reel that tries to do everything, but we want to continue to address these issues, okay? Because it's who's listing. And so on that note, let me ask you, who are the sellers today? Let's get some examples. Who is it that's listing? Relocating, recently got married. Absolutely. Who else? Divorce. Anyone else? A lot of divorce out there. Yeah. Well, aging like you. No, you're 39, right? Yeah. Mike? Retirees. Absolutely. Deceased. Okay. And can we just at least get some love from this side of the room too? Just one person. Okay. There we go. Babies, having babies. And so there's a lot of reasons why people are listing, and it's not people listing out of desperation, like economic carnage. Sometimes it's that. People are in trouble financially, but by and large, it's the people who have their lifestyles colliding with market conditions. And so here's a cool way to look at the market. This is just one table. I had to export 330,000 sales from MLS to come up with this one chart. This one chart took hours to do. But if you like this analysis, I want to keep showing this because here's how it works. And so I wanted to ask the question, who is coming to the market? For instance, when we look at listings and pendings today, 5% of all current listings and pendings last purchased in 2021. Okay, or you look, 54.2% of all current listings and pendings last sold on MLS before 2012. So do you get how that works? And so here's the money stats. 18.4% of listings and pendings are from the pandemic and beyond. And so you're starting to see sellers who wake up from 2020 and beyond. And so in your marketing, think about who is listing, who has incentive to move. Like they might not have the equity to do so, but you want to like talk about that. But by and large, the biggest group, I mean, we have a lot of equity in this market. You wouldn't think so because sellers are like, I'm holding on to everything. I will not reduce the price. And so, another challenge. But how long is it taking you to sell? I know in 2021, everyone was like, look at my stats, 13 days on average. How long are properties staying on the market? 30 days, 60 days? Can I get a 90? Can I get 100? Can I get 120? Yeah. Okay, so here's what the norm looks like in our largest local county in Sacramento. Do you see how the year starts out? It takes longer to sell. The market heats up during the spring. And then for the remaining half of the year, it's very normal to see a longer days on market. Okay, here's 2024 in green. What do you notice about 2024 compared to the pre-2020 norm? Very similar, twinning statistically. What do you notice about 2021 in orange? Crazy low. And that's where everyone and their mom is stuck, by the way. And what do you notice about 2025 in blue? Do you see how the spring market ended early? There was an inflection point. More uncertainty happened. Really, this is not a political statement, but tariffs happened here. Like there's been a notable, like what's going on in the economy. And right now it's taking almost 2 weeks longer to sell than the norm. Okay. And so that's a really good stat to share. Now, can something still go very quickly today? Absolutely. Property's in good condition. If it's a property that checks all the boxes that, and these are the listings that you want. Remodeled, the seller wants to price well, it has a pool, it has a large lot, all the stuff, then it can go very quickly with multiple offers, okay? Here's what it looks like average days on market in 12 counties. And when you look at September last year to this year, what's your observation? Yeah. So definitely, higher everywhere. No area was more aggressive. I'd say take some of the smaller areas with a grain of salt. But we want to say that, yeah, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 3 weeks longer, and we want to be in touch with that trend. And so how do we sell more quickly rather than linger on the market? Okay. Yes. It could. Does that change with one stories versus everything else? It could, depending on the area. Sometimes the difference between 1 and 2 stories is huge. Imagine in a 55 plus community, a 2-story, that's not a good thing. And so, but it's all about what the stats say. So, but I'd say, trust me, bro, rates are going lower, right? That's kind of the message that we've heard for 3 years right now. And it's totally happened, right? A little bit of relief lately. But, we have like, you're such a loser. Stop keeping rates higher, Jerome, and so we're in a position where there's been some serious drama about rates, okay? And joking aside, let me see. And joking aside though, we are at a lower place today than 1 year ago. And what has it done to the market? It's brought a little bit of relief, okay? And so this is something that you can check daily, Mortgage News Daily, but that's what we want to watch, okay? But if you go to a mortgage calculator and plug in 5.5%, because everyone's like, watch out, man. When it's 5.5%, it's going to unleash. The mortgage payment, honestly, isn't that much different. There's a few $100s of relief. And I think that's great, but also we've got to be aware, if someone is priced out of the market by $1,200 and then they're priced out of the market by $1,000, it doesn't do much to move the needle. But if rates dip down more, we will get more buyers back, okay? Now, has anyone noticed jobs reports haven't been very sexy in the country? And so over the past few months, and this is theoretically good for mortgage rates. But the only thing is, what do people need when they're applying for a mortgage and they're buying a house? They need a job, right? Okay, now here's the Jeopardy real estate question. Why don't we have September data for jobs? The government's closed. Yeah, can I just give a shout out to our government right now? No, yeah. So, but here's, I think, the gravity of it. I don't share this to be discouraging. I want us to be really realistic. Lance Lambert's a great follow anywhere online. If U.S. income spiked 60%, we'd return to pre-pandemic housing affordability levels. If home prices fell 38%, we'd return to pre-pandemic affordability. If rates fell to 2.23%, we'd return to pre-pandemic affordability. And so we look at that and go, okay, wait, so we're very far from the numbers working for a lot of people. So I think that can fuel discouragement, or we look at that and go, okay, it's game face time. I've got to do this. I've got to stop putting your hope in lower rates and focus on the market that's here. right? I think that's probably one of the most important slides today, like ingest that, live that. I think sometimes when it comes to rates, we're so fixated on the future. Everything will be awesome once rates go down, but we're missing out on today. It's sort of like everything's going to be so awesome when I get married or when I get divorced or when my kids are out of middle school or when I retire. And so sometimes we're so focused on the future and we're missing out on right now. Okay? Did that get heavy for a sec as your therapist? Yeah. But here's the positive news. We are seeing purchase applications increase in across the country. And so this is a leading indicator for more buyers. Now, it hasn't really made too much of a difference this year, despite this increase, except for the last couple of months. All right. I think this is awesome, but it's also, you back up from the 90s onward and you're like, here's what that little uptick looks like, right? Now, can we just like golf clap, like just a little bit of good news? Okay, a little bit. But I'd say that we're basically at mid 90s levels, but that's fine because Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all these great bands, the mid 90s were such an awesome time. That's actually when I met my wife in 1996, okay? And so let's not be all hopeful. And either you might look and be like, you guys are aging like fine wine or you're decaying rapidly. I'm going to let you guys decide. But I think that there's two ways to look at the housing market. And we can either look and say, total destruction ahead, we're all going to die. You know, there's nothing but hopelessness and despair. Like, that's a great way to live, right? Or we go, what opportunities exist? What opportunities exist for your clients? And what opportunities exist for you as a real estate professional? I think that's the question to ask. And that's what I kind of want to focus on. And so when we look in 12 local counties, this is not a trick question. How many sales have there been in 2025? And right here. Okay, and let's round up to 28,000. That's okay statistically. All right, and how many $1 billion of price volume? Okay, now in a normal market, would these numbers be substantially higher? Absolutely yes. But I see 28,000 data points right here to focus on. We've got to focus on the market that's here. What is the largest county in our region? Sacramento. And so you want to think about, where are you focusing your business? Okay, where are the buyers buying? That's where we want to focus. Okay, and not that you're gonna, if you're in Sacramento, take a listing in Modesto, or you know, if you're in Amador County, you might not be listing, you know, in Nevada City, but you know, maybe you will. Has anyone gone further than you've ever gone before this year and last year? Where you went and you're like, hey, I never took a listing in that outlying market, right? And so I see a lot of agents who are like, you know, El Dorado Hills and Redding housing expert, or Keisha's like, you know, your Bakersfield realtor for life. These are meant to be funny. So, you know, Breeze is like, bro, I will go anywhere in 2025, right? Does anyone else have a similar mantra where you're like, I'll pretty much go anywhere? Like maybe you cut it off at, like, if it's 4 or 5 hours, guys, that's long. Sometimes agents locally take listings in LA and I'm going like, man, do you know the market there? Do you have MLS? Like, wow. But hey, if you're licensed in the state, just make sure you're competent in all areas. Okay, so, but when we zoom in on this local market, just 4 counties, what percentage of all of the market is Sacramento? Yeah, more than half. And so you want to just look and go, where are the deals happening? Where is your attention going? What are you posting on social media? And sometimes we're going like, man, we're talking about a sliver of the market that's very small. We've got to make sure that we're capturing a bigger area. When we look at January to September every single year, where has the market grown most? El Dorado County, okay? And we see that, you know, it's very modest in some areas. It's in our 4-county region. It's actually up a little bit from 1 year ago, but it's down about 200 sales when you consider some of the counties that, you know, have been down. And so again, where are buyers buying? All right, a little bit stronger at the top of the market. At the very highest prices, we're above 800,000. We've seen more sales this year compared to last year. Okay, and so just think about, you know, where are buyers buying and how can you position yourself for business. It's not a substantial difference, but we want to just be aware of, okay, where are the players playing? Okay. Now, when you look at this graph, what percentage of sales are below 300,000 in 2025 so far? Okay, it's not a trick question. It's 1.5%. Thank you. Awesome. And so that's a crowded pond. What about above $1 million if you add these two together? 10%. Yeah, and so we think about what price ranges are moving, okay? Did you know Sacramento County, 5% of the market is above $1 million in 2025? Does anyone know what Placer is? Closer to 15%. What about El Dorado? About 20%. And so the market's different everywhere. Did you know in the whole region, 70% of all of the market is between 400 and 800? And so don't sleep on lower prices because that's where the bulk of the action is happening, right? Now, I've used this before, but who has ever had a hot pocket in your life? Yeah? Who has not had a hot pocket? You haven't had the privilege? Oh my gosh, guys. If you've had one over the last week, I know you have teenagers in your household, right? So if you put a hot pocket in the microwave, Matt, what happens when you put a hot pocket in the microwave and you take it out too early? What's the temperature like? It's uneven. Yeah, there's a frozen spot, there's a lukewarm spot, there's, that one really blazing spot. And so the temperature is different. And that's the same thing in the housing market where we might look and go, gosh, the condo market feels really cold. Or maybe a brand new condo subdivision, it actually feels like it's more normal, okay? Maybe the luxury market feels different than other parts, okay? So when you look at Sun City, Lincoln Hills, and what do you notice about volume? This is January, this is the whole year from 2004 onward. What do you notice about volume over the past couple years in Sun City? Do you see how it's very normal? And so the market temperature, actually in Sun City, I would say the market's softening, but buyer volume is very, very normal, all right? When you look at Granite Bay, what do you notice about volume this year? A little bit of an uptick, but kind of flat, down about 20% or so. 95747 Roseville, down a little bit, but not down as much as some areas. Okay, El Dorado Hills volume, do you notice a little bit of relief? Yeah, a little bit of relief this year. 95834 Natomas, yeah, pretty flat. You might look and be like, oh, baby, check it out. There's 9 more sales. Okay, fantastic. Rosemont, just a little bit more action. Okay, Orangevale, there's 1 more sale this year than last year. And so the market isn't the same everywhere, and it's really volume that pays the bills. That's why I'm focusing on volume. Okay, when you look at 95757, do you notice how the last 2 years have been a little bit better than previous years? Do you know why that is? Who is listing more? Builders. Okay, so sometimes we need to look at the stats and be like, this is the builder issue. Okay, so you're in my world now, right? For absolutely. So here's, I think, a good way to describe the market. A few years ago, you can see that buyers were walking on eggshells around sellers, over asking, waiving contingencies, needing to stand out. But today, sellers are walking on eggshells around buyers. Price has to be right, giving credits, needing to make the transaction good for buyers too. That may not be true in the Northeast or portions of the Midwest. It's absolutely true in a lot of markets in Texas, Florida, and California. So use the eggshell language. Get creative with how you're talking about the housing market online, all right? When you look in the region as a whole in Sacramento, what do we notice about this year of volume, January through September? It's like slightly higher than last year because September was strong. But it's one of the lowest years. It just is what it is. And here's a look at home buyer demand, if we're honest, okay? I look forward when I don't share this meme. I think this meme is really funny. We probably need about 20 more people in this room so we can laugh over that. But when you look, here's how it feels emotionally in the marketplace. And, we're really happy when volume is up. Life feels awesome, but then we're sad and, depressed and angry and frustrated when volume is down. Can anyone relate to that? I think it's a human experience. I think we all relate. But what I want to advocate for today is that I think we need to find contentment in no matter what the market's doing, And it's sort of like, when someone's like, Mom, why have you been so edgy for the last 3 years? And you can be like, well, son, volume's been low for 3 years in a row now. Or, Dad, why are you so cranky? Well, because volume's been low for 3 years. Well, guess what? We're going to continue to have lower volume. So we've got to crack the code and figure out, how do I find a deep sense of satisfaction, right? Does that make sense? Okay, sermon done, but this is what I'm constantly telling myself, all right? But in the words of Maury Povich, sales volume does suck, okay? We have to be real about that, all right? You guys were the only ones who watched Maury growing up? I didn't see anyone else laughing, okay? When you look at the Sacramento region, what do you notice about the number of listings today, active listings compared to 1 year ago? They're up by about 700. So no wonder why the market feels like it's softer, right? Absolutely. But what do you notice about 2019 levels? It's still down. We're still missing about 1,000 active listings, which is wild in this market for 3 years with rampant unaffordability. Look at 2023 when sellers were pulling back. What a different market today. And so no wonder why the market feels different. Now, let me show you some different areas. Here's Stockton. What do you notice about Stockton? Does it look like the same exact trend, down from 2019, up from last year? Here's Folsom. What do you notice about Folsom? Highest ever. We're all going to die. Okay, why is Folsom higher than it's been since 2019? New homes. Did Folsom Ranch exist in 2019? Hardly. Okay. What about 95747 Roseville? Yeah, and so it's a lot more builders listing, but that's a substantial difference to have about 100 more listings. And so in each little market, sub-market we're in, we want to go, what's going on with listings? The temperature might be different. What do you notice about Modesto? Because I know everyone here serves Modesto, or hi Modesto peeps if you're online. Okay, similar dynamic. Okay, what do we notice about Woodland? We've seen growth from last year, but still down from 2019. So there's a similar dynamic that the market is being hit across the board in most areas with more listings, but we're not even back to those 2019 levels. What do you notice in Fairfield? Similar dynamic. I'm a one-trick pony. That's all I'm talking about. Okay. So, but my question to you, if you log into MLS today and let's just round up, say there's 4,500 listings. If you logged into MLS in 2008 at this time, how many listings would there have been? Does anyone have a guess? Let's go more than 10,000. No, 20,000. That would have been nuts. Okay, we're gonna go down about 13,000. There were 8,600 more at this time in 2008. And so again, we don't want to expect 2007, 2008 results with 2025 stats. That's not me sugarcoating. I actually wish we had more listings so we could get prices to soften so more buyers can participate in the market. Okay. I know that's not what you're supposed to say as a realtor, but I'm not a realtor, so I can say whatever I want, right? Okay. Now, new listings. Does anyone have any new listings coming right now between right now and the end of the year? Yeah, so you got some more stuff coming in the market. Does anyone have sellers who are like, I'm going to wait until February or March? Yeah, probably some of that. Here's what the normal pattern looks like. I want to show you 2023, then show you some different areas. And do you see how January through, May, June, the number of new listings increases, and then it softens for the rest of the year? Look how low December can be. And here's 2024. It's hard to see in red, but that's red. What do you notice in 2024? Do you see higher? Like sellers are clearly thawing out. And here's 2025 in blue. Do you see the beginning of the year? Man, sellers are thawing out even more than, wait, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Whoa. Do you see what over the last couple months, sellers have pulled? I'm not talking about pulling listings off the market. I'm talking about sellers who are not listing their homes. And so there's been a definitive change in seller behavior. I'd say that there's been uncertainty. And so sellers have been like, whoa, what's going on in the economy? And I'm not going to list my home. I thought this was funny. Thanks, guys, for giggling. And this is something that's happening. Here's a different way to look at it. This is from Redfin data. And I want to show you various counties in the region. Okay, 2025 is in blue, and then 2024 is in orange. And so do you see the year started out in blue? We are way above last year going, great, this is fantastic. Sellers are thawing out. But do you see this inflection point? Uncertainty happened, and do you see what happened to this blue line? And now it's below last year. Okay, that's Sacramento and San Joaquin County. Does that look similar as a trend? Here is Yolo County. See that, dynamic where sellers shifted their behavior? Here's Placer County, boom, down, and it's kind of hovering around last year. El Dorado County, look at this gap, and then that gap just disappeared as seller behavior changed. Have you noticed that in your book of business where, fewer listings? It may or may not be noticeable, but it's noticeable in the stats. Here's Solana County, similar vibe. Yuba County, and here's all of the United States with every area that Redfin covers. And this is a trend that we're seeing across the country. It isn't just a Sacramento thing, but could this change the feel of the housing market? Yeah, do you remember when I said that the market is soft, but it's not as soft as it was? And so a few months back, we had a lot more active listings, but sellers stepped back, and then all of a sudden, there's not as many options. Frustrating for buyers too, who are starving for good options, all right? So here's pendings in 2023, then pendings in 2024, the candy canes. Do you see how there was a little bit more last year when rates dipped? Yeah, and here's pendings in 2025 in blue. It's basically been pretty mediocre, a little bit more these past couple months when rates went down, right? But what does the future hold? I think that's the big question. And, for the housing market. But let me ask you this. With the NFL in the Super Bowl, who is going to win the Super Bowl this year? Come on. Niners. Okay, that's the right answer. Okay, but we probably have some Raiders in here too. Yeah, I know. That's always like, it's just tough being a Jets fan or, sometimes Raiders. Hard to predict who's going to win the Super Bowl with only 7 games under our belt, right? And I think the same thing happens with the housing market, because there's a lot to consider. Here's kind of how my mind works. And in housing, there's 3 different, levels. There's rates. And this is like all we talk about. When rates go down, everything's going to be awesome. And that's cool. Rates are one piece of the puzzle that matter greatly. But we also got some negative news where, that could influence whether sellers sell or buyers buy, where they notice that, okay, price declines are more pronounced. But I think one of the big ones is uncertainty. And that's been the curveball this year. It's one that I wasn't expecting to see buyer behavior change. You know how the market peaked early this year, buyers backed off, and even sellers have backed off. That was unexpected, okay? And so I think we have to watch all of these things. For the last half of this year, or the last few months, I'm expecting a seasonal market. It's going to happen next month. We're going to start to really, as the closer we get to Thanksgiving, people are just like, okay, I'm out of here. December, goes down even more. And it's going to happen starting in January and February. What's the housing market going to do? It's going to heat up. Okay. And so we want to expect normal seasonality. The bigger picture, what happens to prices? I think we need to continue to watch uncertainty and rates, negative news. Okay. I do think there's definitely a lot more room for prices to soften. There's not a mechanism or engine to get very quick price change. Okay. I do think if we continue to see listings grow more than sales, then yeah, obviously we can still see price softening, okay? My concern is that seeing listings start to go down, I'm like, man, that's exactly the opposite of what we want to see in our market. If we ever want health restored, we've got to see listings grow to make that happen. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So when you look at new construction, though, speaking of opportunities, here are the 10 places where new construction sold the most last month from North State BIA data. And so who are the top dogs? Rancho and Roseville and in Sacramento. And so think about, where are you positioning your business? New construction, where builders are reaching out, there's a lot of opportunity, okay? Look at builder data. This represents 8 counties. Most of it is in Sac and Placer and El Dorado. This year, January through September, we are missing about 1,100 sales from 1 year ago. Okay, and so volume for builders is down by almost 21%. And so, have you noticed that builders are calling you, and then they're like rolling out the welcome mat, being like, "Hey, I know we haven't talked for a long time, but how are you doing?" Right? And so this is why they're like, "I just called to say," and you get that if you're from the 80s. And so, but when you look, like Lennar is actually the largest local builder. They're one of the largest builders in the country. But when you look at the concessions that they're including, it's a larger percentage of the total price than we've seen since 2009. And so they're bending over backwards, lowering prices and offering concessions. I think one of the hardest houses to sell right now is the development that's adjacent to the builder that just sold 2021 through 2024. And so, but I see this not as a threat, I see this as an opportunity. Do you know that some builders are also, they're working with agents? Have you noticed that some agents will have like 10 listings directly from the builder? And so they're not just working with their inside team. And so I smell opportunity here, right? Does anyone know someone that worked at Intel that no longer works at Intel? Yeah. Does anyone know someone who lost a job this year? By show of hands? Some people, okay, you guys are hanging out with people who are really wealthy. I totally want to go to dinner with you, okay? And so could job losses, could that translate into more real estate activity? Absolutely. Yeah. Could someone though that has a tech job, could they just go get another tech job though also? Absolutely. Especially with kind of an AI boom happening right now. But here's a guy that worked at Intel and said, just accepted an offer on my place in Serrano and El Dorado Hills, wish we didn't have to move. And he ended up moving to Boise, right? And I've been following, we've been talking for all of 2025. And so there is opportunity for some. Okay, when you look at the unemployment rate in California in black, and then the unemployment rate in Sacramento in blue, what do you notice from 1990 onward? Very, very similar. All local counties look like this. Some of the smaller counties are like, they're all over the place, but they're showing the same trend. Do we see a little bit of an uptick? Yeah, we want to pay attention to that. We want to talk about some of this stuff on our socials without being super, super negative, okay? But the big question is, are you for or against Pamela Anderson and Liam Neeson getting together? So okay, so they've found love, and I mentioned that not to be awkward, but maybe that's unavoidable. But we want to pay attention to who's getting together, who's breaking up, who's moving down. Who is having quadruplets and they need a larger home. We want to pay attention to those lifestyle moves. And by the way, she doesn't wear makeup. Is that like a baller move? I feel like as a man, like maybe I don't have an opinion, but I'm like, dang, I probably wouldn't do that as a lady if I was. But we want to watch death, disease, debt, divorce, diamonds, diapers. We want to watch all of these things and communicate on your socials about all of this all the time, because it's not about prices. It's not about rates. We want to communicate who is moving right now. And it's these categories. Okay. And so let's back off what prices are doing. Okay. It doesn't matter. Here's something interesting, comes from Resi Club, and you can see remote work. What do we see happening with the share of remote workers since 2021? It's declining. And so could this be opportunity for you? Absolutely. Could someone in Folsom Ranch lose their job at Intel and then go back to the Bay Area? Or someone who moved from Sacramento and then they're telecommuting, their boss didn't know that they live in Boise, and then their boss calls them back now. There's going to be opportunity there. When you look at population in Sacramento from the Census Bureau, what has happened through the years? Are we growing in population? Yeah, this hasn't really translated to sales because of affordability, but when you look at Stockton Lodi, growth in population, when you look at Modesto Metro, growth in population, or Vallejo Fairfield, growth in population. And so we need to sort of adjust our narrative. Not everyone and their mom is leaving California. California's population is not, it's not declining right now. Okay, it's not growing rapidly, but we want to tap into locals. I feel like that's good news, right? So short sales in 2025 in all of MLS represent what percentage of the market? Yeah, about 1/3. Yeah, not 32%, but 1/3 of 1% of the market. Now, if prices keep softening, what are we going to see more of? More short sales. If you haven't changed your website since 2009, fantastic. It still says you're a short sales specialist. Right, Randall? So perfect. You're there, dude. And so we want to pay attention to this as a small sliver of the market. There are people who you're going to converse with who bought in mid-2022, and you're going to need to talk with them about their options, okay? When we look at short sales and bank-owned sales, what percentage of the market were they the last quarter in our largest local county? Less than 1%, okay? So let's also focus on the 99%, okay? When you look at mortgage delinquencies nationally, do we see like a little bit of an uptick? Is it the worst time ever? No, it's not. Okay, commercial delinquencies look way different, not residential. When you look at credit card delinquencies, though, they've definitely risen nationally. And here are auto delinquencies in green, they've risen. And then look at student loans. Okay, and so I think in the background, people are riding the struggle bus. It's been tough. And so that's why, so the real estate community were like, hey, look at rates, they're down 0.25%, this is awesome. But then everyone's like, yeah, but my healthcare and my insurance, and I know eggs are down, but everything else is so expensive. Have you gone out to eat recently? Oh my gosh, is it just me? And so I think people are feeling the sting of everything. And so we want to be sensitive to where people are at. Now, does anyone know who is killing it right here? Who is doing the best by age? Is it young people or old people when it comes to getting into credit card debt or auto delinquencies? Young people, absolutely. Okay, now here's the interesting question. Who is the most delinquent by age for student loans? 50 and above, okay? And so it makes sense, probably Gen X have been holding on for a long time. They're like, screw you, I'm never gonna pay it. I mean, who knows what's happening, but we want to just pay attention and know what's happening in people's lives because it might influence what they need to do with real estate or, whether they can participate or not. But bro, I was a top producer in 2021, right? So was everybody, right? But what does this number represent? The number of about 2,500 more cancellations in 2025 than 2024 in the wider MLS territory. And so that's a good stat for like a really, 12 counties. But let's zoom in on Sacramento. Raise your hand if you've had a cancellation this year. Be honest. Okay, I know there's a lot of hands. There's probably some that didn't go up. In Sacramento, we've seen a 39% increase in cancellations. We're not quite back to 2019 levels, but remember, we're missing about 1,000 active listings from 2019. And so we're in a place where we've really seen cancellations grow rapidly, okay? And so just pay attention. This is a graph I want everyone to take on a listing presentation and ask your seller, how do we not become this stat? But also I want you to look at this and go, okay, how can I be the second or third agent in line and get this property sold? Is this the highest ever? No, absolutely not. Way different back in the past. Look at condos. Do you see a difference in condo cancellations? There's way more. So hot pockets, the market isn't the same in every sliver. Condo supply in blue has grown a lot faster than detached supply in black. And so no wonder why the market's different. Now here are condo sales. What do you notice this year compared to last year with condo sales? There's a little bit more. And so we're always like down about condos, like condo market's getting destroyed. But you look at the number of actual sales and it's actually a little bit higher than last year. So sometimes there's a disconnect between what the market's doing and what our perception is. What happens if condos can go down faster? Do you know what happens with buyers? They can re-engage with condos more quickly, okay? When you look at above and below, I'm just gonna skip that because we don't have too much time. Let's look at September in a lot of different ways. What do you notice? What stat stands out to you for closed sales, selling below, at, or above? Below, yeah, you're like, whoa, what's going on in the market? And let's compare that to 2021. What do you notice? Stark difference. Could you take a screenshot of this and like share it on your socials? Could you tell the story of the market for those sellers that are stuck in 2021? Absolutely. I think this is what it looks like. You got to let go of that market, if you know what I mean. So I thought that was funny. Here's 2007. Let me just skip this. What do you notice about 2025 compared to the pre-2020 norm? Does it look like we're a little softer? So here's the market. We're no longer flexing like 2021. We're not crashing like 2007, but we're also softer than the norm before 2019. It's exactly what I said before. Have you noticed sellers are like, I know the housing market's softened, but I'm not giving any damn concessions, right? Has anyone encountered that? Yeah, I'd say be like Morpheus. It's not about the red pill or the blue pill. Take the purple pill and do both, okay? But when you look at concessions in September by county, according to MLS, remember, these are things like closing costs, credit for repairs, rate buy down. This is not compensation. It's hit and miss. Lower prices are going to have more credits and concessions. The higher you go, probably the least likely, but just notice that in about half of transactions, concessions aren't occurring either, all right? The average concession is about $9,000 in the Sacramento region. Ever since MLS put that stat back in there, I can do some analysis. Talk to your sellers about that. Sometimes the concession is $300 and sometimes it's $30,000, right? So it's hit and miss, but buyers are walking away when sellers are playing games. I get dismayed when I hear about a seller that won't offer a credit at $2,500 and the buyer's like, I'm out of here. You might only get one buyer, okay? The rest of the year is going to be awesome. This is what it's going to look like. When we look, and we're winding down, I just have a few more. When you look, here's the number of pendings. Do you see that the number of pendings peaks in May? And then right now, here's where we're at. There's less demand in the fall, but September and October are sort of that last run on the market where before demand really falls in November and then the low point in December. So just know where we're at for the season. And then next year, what we want to expect, the market's going to ramp up, really hit its stride after the Super Bowl, okay? Here's new listings, and you can see where we're at right now, a dip in the fall, and then the low point in December, right? I always like, if you list in December, I'm paying attention as a buyer because that person really wants to sell, right? But think about your target audience. I want you to be precise in your message. I hope today that you maybe picked up a few things to talk about. Some closing numbers, 47.1%. What does this represent? The number of listings that have had a price reduction in the region. And I want you to think, how can you weave this into your narrative? How can you share it on an Instagram story or a blog post or when you're talking to clients? The price is wrong, if you know what I mean. 5.3%, that's the average price reduction among active listings. Frankly, active listings have been so overpriced, 5.3 isn't enough in a lot of cases. 40.6%, I love this stat. 40.6% of pendings right now needed a reduction before getting into contract. These are sellers who listen to the market. You can make an Instagram reel out of just this stat. 59.4% of pendings did not need a reduction before getting into contract. They were priced right. This speaks to pricing right, okay? But also we look at this and go, a lot of these buyers are going to get into contract. They're still getting in below the list price now. Okay, when the house sells for exactly what you said it would, if you know what I mean. Here is the average amount of price reduction among pending contracts. I love this stat because the seller's like, hey man, we're going to just, let's reduce the price by $100. And then just say, hey, the average is a lot more, but here are the comps, here are the listings, here's where we need to be, okay? But here's probably the stat you don't want to share, the range of the price reductions in the region before getting into contract. So it ranged anywhere from $1 to $360,000. So if you're overpriced by $200,000, like don't do the $1 thing, okay? But here's the average percentage reduction among pendings. I like this with sellers listening to the market. We are going to reduce more significantly if the market requires, all right? So it's time to buckle up, and I just got some closing unsolicited advice. I'd say find opportunities instead of negativity. There's a lot of negativity out there, and that doesn't it doesn't do good things for life, okay? Let's say share market nuggets every single week. I speak somewhere, once a week at least. If you ever want my slide deck, just email me. You can email me every week. I will share that deck with you. Be that market expert, okay? Be yourself, have a plan, work the plan. I think it's that simple. We've got to come up with how am I going to work in this market with lower volume. I'd say be realistic about continuing to have low buyer volume. That's not to be discouraging. That's to go, okay, game face on in today's market. We're not going to see a big breakthrough with volume until we see a bigger breakthrough with affordability. All right, that's just the reality. Keep getting in front of people every single week. What meetings do you need to attend? Who do you need to get in front of? Who are the gatekeepers to the types of work that you want to do? Obsess over that and have your plan and then work that plan. I'd say be like Highway 50, never stop working on yourself. Okay? Isn't that the truth? And last but not least, don't let the market dictate your emotions and well-being. And I think a lot, that's where like emotions and real estate, they really collide. And we go, how am I going to show up? How am I going to treat people? Who am I going to get to know? This business and this life is all about relationships. We've got to throw ourselves into that. Okay. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you picked up a few things. I know I talked a lot. This is my blog. I have one weekly post every week. I try to write something thoughtful. In other words, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for being here, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Do we have any questions from the audience for Ryan? We have a little bit of room. Okay, coming your way.
So, Ryan, please. So, Ryan, what do you think caused the pretty quick uncertainty in buyers changing in this late spring time when they just said, nope, sort of done? What do you think triggered that?
I think increased uncertainty. I mean, like I said, it's not a political thing. As soon as tariffs happened, buyers backed off. Okay. I'm not blaming the Trump administration. I'm just saying like there was a definitive change right when that happened because what's going to happen in the world and what's happening with the supply chain. I think a lot of people start to freak out. Some of that hasn't even panned out at all, but there's been a definitive change. It doesn't help with weak jobs reports and unemployment. The cost of stuff it seems like it keeps rising despite, sometimes politicians are like, there's glowing news about inflation. And then you're like, well, where, what stores are you shopping at? So, but who else? Any other questions?
Hi, Ryan. How do we get those slides?
So you can send me an email if you'd like, right there. Or please email me. Don't text message me. I'm going out of town for 2 days. I can respond to emails though. That's no problem. But otherwise, I mean, if you guys ever want a bunch of slides and you're thinking, I don't know what to share on my socials, email me. I love when people do that. And I will drop 20, 30, 40, 50 on you, you find the one that works. Okay. Who, I think we had one there.
A couple more.
Most of your slides also. Yeah, most of your slides had no condos. If you put the condos, just them, how volatile would the prices have been?
So condos have dipped a little bit, but when you look at condo prices, I mean, they might be down 3 or 4% instead of 2%, like in Zillow's index. I don't include condos in the Sacramento stats because it's only about 5% of the market. And condos are at lower prices. It's more stagnant. When we deal with foreclosures, there's more foreclosures there. I think it waters down the market. In San Francisco, condos are more like 45% of the market. I might have to include those, but it's strategic because I think we want to look at those separately. But it wouldn't make a massive difference because it's really 5% of the market. So, but it would water down the stats a little bit. So, absolutely. Was there another one? Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan, for a great, informative and entertaining presentation. I got two quick questions. First one deals.
Just one. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, I'll make it three then. No, two. One is about condos. The last condo I sold was in 2022 before all the challenges of insurance.
Yeah.
And so if you can comment on that a little bit and if that seems to have blown over, that everybody's, kind of the trend will be that it'll probably be the condo market would be okay, given the fact that the shock has already been processed. And then the second one is has the NAR settlement affected business in any ways? I know we talk about concessions and some of the concessions were was the commission factored into that or just concessions like repairs?
Yeah. Okay. So first, condo market has been struggling for the last couple of years. Sometimes people blame the condo market on SB 326, the balcony thing. I'm like, hey, condos were declining last year. And so we've got to recognize that there was something bigger going on. And SB 326, I think, is fuel on the fire. And it's really, it's in a large part an insurance thing where the association gets hit with a $200,000 insurance bill. They pass that off in the form of HOA payments or special assessments at $10,000. Each owner has to pay, like financing issues. Like it's a multi-pronged issue. And insurance issues haven't gone away in the market. I think insurance issues, a good way to describe it is that insurance issues went from the foothills with fire stuff and it's gone down to the suburbs. And so we're just seeing it show up in different ways. I would say that the commission does not belong in the concessions field at all. MLS is very clear about that. Remember, there was always a commission place and then a concessions. We've always looked at seller concessions as credits for closing costs and stuff. The NAR lawsuit came along and then people were like, oh, look at this field. We're just going to use that field for the commission now. There's been some confusion. I'm not in agreement with the way that NAR has handled that with saying that, it's a concession now, the commission, and so it belongs in that field. I would just say that ship has sailed. The commission's issue is gone. MLS, if you look at the categories they have, it's only for credits now, and it's only for, personal property and stuff. And so that's just the way that we have to use it. Whether people like that or not, I know it can be divisive. We can cage fight over that later. I think that's the world that we have to deal with. So, anything else? Are we ready to, let this ship sail?
We do have questions from Zoom land.
Okay.
And also I want to remind everyone that we'll have a replay link for this meeting today. So you'll have that as well.
Why don't we do one from Zoom and close this up? Because I think everyone here is ready to leave.
Okay.
So let's end this bad boy.
All right. So we have one question from Zoom. We had an audience of about 350 people attend over Zoom.
That's what happens when you make it the Zoom option. Absolutely.
What's one thing you see going wrong with a homes when you appraise a home? For example, a lot of what are you seeing out there? For example, a lot of what are you seeing out there?
Just one thing? No.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, sometimes it's the small stuff like carbon monoxide detector, not being there, smoke alarms not being there. I saw a property yesterday and the water heater's not double strapped. It's kind of like, this is like basic stuff 101 that I think is very easy to tackle before a property gets on the market. But I think sometimes what happens, so that it's hard, is that in today's market, the property's been listed for an adequate amount of time at 500,000, and then the right buyer comes along, and then the price gets increased to 515,000, and guess how much the credit is? 15,000. And so the question from the appraisal standpoint is, what's it worth? It looks like the seller inflated the price, but I don't see value in the contract. I see what is going on in the comps. If all the comps are at 500, the appraiser might look like the bad guy when this property being appraised comes in at 500 because that's what the comp shows. So I just say that in a market that's been softening or prices have been going down, I think that's sort of a red flag, or at least something to look at to go, hey, we got to be really careful about how much the seller can net in a market that's losing steam. So I'll stick around if anyone has questions, issues. If you didn't like it today, then we can fight afterwards. I'm just kidding. But thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it. And then, so thank you.